Camera speed.
Sound production, take one.
Action!
Welcome to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign. If you love old movies, Hollywood history, or the golden age of filmmaking, you've come to the right place. This is the podcast that talks about amazing stories of Tinseltown from another era. Hear fascinating conversations with writer-producer Steve Cubine, who quite literally lives just beneath the Hollywood sign, and actress-writer Nan McNamara. Now your hosts, Steve and Nan.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of From Beneath the Hollywood Sign. And you know, recently Nan and I were honored to be able to cover the TCM Film Festival this past spring. And one of the really cool things that happened, I know you remember this, Nan.
Yes.
Michelle Pfeiffer received her hand and footprints in cement at the Grauman's Chinese Theater. We weren't invited to that ceremony because only the big boys were, like Entertainment Tonight and The Hollywood Reporter and Variety. But we were walking down the sidewalk and you could see through the stands. There was just a little opening and we got to see Michelle at the podium, you know, making her speech before she plants her beautiful hands in cement. And I felt like Barbara Stanwyck and Stella Dallas. We were like outside on the street in the rain watching the daughter get married in this opulent mansion with all the other peons. But it was kind of cool to see.
It was very cool. And we didn't have tears quite down our face like Barbara Stanwyck did. But it got us thinking about the history of certainly the footprint and handprint ceremonies, but also the history of the Chinese theater itself. And so that's what today's episode is going to be all about.
Exactly. So as the movie industry began to emerge and grow in the beginning of the 20th century, most of the major studios actually owned the theaters which showed their movies. Many of these theaters were so elaborate they sometimes competed with the films on the screen due to their rich, opulent interiors. Now, Marcus Lowe, who was the founder of the Lowe's Theater and coincidentally the Metro in MGM, was quoted as saying, "I don't sell tickets to movies, I sell tickets to theaters."
It was with this mentality that entrepreneur and showman SID GRAUMAN created some of the most famous movie theaters in the world, including the $1 Million Theater in downtown Los Angeles in 1917, the Egyptian Theater on Hollywood Boulevard in 1922. Grauman also had part ownership in the El Capitan Theater on Hollywood Boulevard, which opened in 1926, originally as a Broadway-style theater.
However, none of these theaters could even remotely compete with what has become known as the most famous movie theater in the world. And of course, we're talking about the Chinese Theater. Located at 6925 Hollywood Boulevard, across the street from the El Capitan and one block west of the Egyptian, the Chinese Theater has been the site of more gala movie premieres than any other theater in the world. With its elaborate Asian-inspired exterior architecture and interior adornments, it is the definition of opulence. However, it's kind of ironic that these lush designs are equaled in their awe-inducing appeal of what is on the ground before you even enter the building. The Forecourt of the Stars, as it's come to be known, is a cement courtyard at the entrance of the theater that houses the footprints and handprints of some of the most famous movie stars in the world.
So who was the creator of this theater, SID GRAUMAN, and how did the theater begin, and how did the tradition of stars putting their hands and feet in cement begin? Well, we're going to talk about all of that today. SID GRAUMAN was born on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 1879, in Indianapolis, Indiana. He was one of 6 children born to David and Rose GRAUMAN. SID's career began at the young age of 17 when his father took him to the Yukon Territory during the Gold Rush era to build a theater and put on a benefit show for the miners who were ill. When his father had to return to the United States due to a family illness, young GRAUMAN remained. He was a likable chap. He made friends and business acquaintances very easily, including a young Jack London, who, of course, would go on to write Call of the Wild.
That's wild. I love that.
Yeah.
When he was 19, GRAUMAN returned to his family in San Francisco, where he and his father, and get this, I love this, they became vaudeville impresarios, and they opened a theater called The Unique. According to biographer Charles Beardsley, even then, there were architectural hints of what would make SID GRAUMAN world famous. The Unique Theater had deep carpeted steps, a singular facade, and a Chinese usher to greet arriving guests. The Unique Theater hosted such stars as Erich von Stroheim, Al Jolson, and singer-comedian Sophie Tucker.
Well, unfortunately, the unique was short-lived. When the 1906 earthquake hit San Francisco, the theater was destroyed. But young Sid Grauman was not to be defeated. He cleared the land of rubble, set up a canvas tent and folding chairs, and got back to business with a sign out front that read, "Nothing to fall on you except canvas." I mean,
That's clever marketing.
Very clever, right?
Yeah. Grauman quickly, he branched out with venues in San Jose and Stockton, Sacramento. He stayed in San Francisco a few more years, but the lure of Hollywood was calling, and he soon moved to Southern California, where he forged relationships with producer Joseph Schenck, who would later go on to form 20th Century Fox Studios with Darryl Zanuck, and real estate developer Charles Toberman, who we actually mentioned in episode 91 when we did the episode about the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Now, it was during this time that Grauman began to conceptualize the Chinese theater. In addition to Schenck and Toberman, Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks Sr. were key financial partners in building the theater. Grauman first leased the land where his Chinese theater would eventually be built in February of 1920 from silent film star Francis X. Bushman, who owned a house on the site.
There's a really funny story that Toberman kept enlarging the theater's plans beyond all practicality until Grauman and Schenck finally decided to ship him off to the Orient to gather research on Chinese architecture. So in the meantime, the groundbreaking for the Chinese theater took place on January 5th, 1926, with silent screen star Norma Talmadge turning the dirt with a gold-plated shovel presented by actress Anna May Wong. A few months earlier, in November of 1925, Wong, donning work clothes, got to drive the first rivet to begin the construction. Just as a reminder, we featured Anna May Wong on this podcast in episode 86 as our star of the month. In addition, the entire cast from the prologue of King Vidor's The Big Parade, 1925, performed for the crowd. They were currently a block east at Grauman's Egyptian Theater. By the way, it's reported that Charles Toberman took such a long time researching Chinese art and architecture that he missed the formal opening of the Chinese Theater, which was held on May 18th, 1927, exactly 1 year, 1 month, and 9 days after his departure for the Orient.
His research must have been so extensive.
Yes.
A little bit about the theater itself. It was built in the exotic revival style with a detailed interpretation of Chinese art and architecture. Raymond Kennedy and Meyer Holler of the Meyer Holler firm designed the theater's striking green bronze pagoda roof, flanked by 2 massive coral red columns and a 30-foot high stone dragon. Beneath the columns stood 2 large stone dogs guarding the entrance. A bronze statue in front of the stone dogs reportedly symbolized the human genius of poetry and drama. I love that.
Yeah.
The statue was surrounded by flames that signified eternal creative imagination, another of Grauman's inspirations.
Well, according to the Academy of Motion Pictures, although the approach to Chinese architecture was fundamentally an imitation, there were actually many multi-talented Chinese Americans working in Hollywood, producing the key features of the building. Director Moon Kwan designed and collaborated with Chinese artisans to create many of the theater's statues, and actor Key Luke painted the murals decorating the lobby.
Now, this is really interesting to me. Another contributor to the aesthetics of the theater, it will surprise you. Band leader and musician Xavier Cugat had hidden skills besides being a musician and a band leader. He was also an artist. Who knew? He painted part of the interior of the theater, specifically the artwork featuring trees and leaves that were located between the pillars on the side wall of the theater. These pillars are notable because they're imported from China and also house the vents for the theater's air conditioning and heating symbols. So who knew that Cugat had such mad skills?
That's amazing, yeah. Sid Grauman initially had Chinese sentries guarding the forecourt before every screening.
How dramatic.
It's very dramatic.
I love it.
Something that he had done at the Egyptian theater with Arab sentries on the roof, which I also think is amazing.
I know.
The interior of the Chinese theater, which originally seated approximately 2,200 people, was jaw-dropping. An enormous chandelier in the center of the theater is designed in the style of a Chinese lantern on top of an elaborate gold starburst. It hangs 60 feet above the rows of plush lounge seats upholstered in flame red, as was the auditorium itself, with accents of jade and gold. All the seats were located on a single raked floor, and every seat had a clear view of the stage and screen. There were also celebrity boxes next to the projector room for special visitors where they could see but not be seen.
I love that.
Right?
There was a huge fireproof proscenium curtain that was designed to represent the twin doors of a huge Chinese cabinet, decorated with figures on a peacock blue field. Now, Grauman approved every single detail of design, large and small, down to the light switches and the laying of tiles. No expense was spared. Grauman and his team studied the floor plans of over 200 theaters, as well as reportedly reviewing 20,000 photographs of Chinese art and architecture.
That is amazing.
Yeah, he did his research.
He did. Well, not everyone was impressed with the completed theater. In his book, Dream Palaces of Hollywood's Golden Age, journalist David Wallace tells this very funny story about Pittsburgh millionaire Harry K. Thaw, who in 1906 killed Stanford White, one of America's most famous architects, in a jealous rage over model Evelyn Nesbit.
The girl in the velvet swing.
Yes, and Thaw was eventually acquitted as being temporarily insane, but on a later visit to the Chinese theater, Thaw reportedly took one look at the inside of it, clasped his hands to his head, and exclaimed, "My God, I shot the wrong architect."
Oh my God, that's hilarious. The theater actually took 18 months to complete at a cost of $2 million, which today would roughly be $36.5 million.
Wow.
And for the premiere of the Chinese theater, Grauman chose Cecil B. DeMille's King of Kings, the story of Jesus Christ's crucifixion and resurrection. Now, there was a lot of controversy over this film because it was the first time that the face of Jesus had ever been portrayed in film.
Wow.
And in this film, it was portrayed by H.B. Werner, who many of you will remember as the druggist from It's a Wonderful Life, who almost gives that kid the poison.
Oh.
George Bailey saves him.
Yes, right.
Well, the film received rave reviews, as did Grauman's live prologue, which included over 100 actors introducing the film. The prologue was so long that the film didn't even start screening until 11 p.m.
Oh, no.
Way past my bedtime.
Me too.
The prologue was an invention of Grauman's that he started at his $1 million theater downtown. There, live spectacles were designed to prepare the audience for the film they were about to see and usually included a full orchestra. The prologues were reportedly often better than the films that followed.
Wow. You can see photos of some of these prologues. They are extravagant.
I wish we still did that.
Yeah.
El Capitan does a little bit.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. Well, you can see why, describing all of these details, Sid Grauman became known as Mr. Show Business, as well as called the P.T. Barnum of the movies. He knew how to throw a party. The night before the film was set to premiere to the public, a special event was staged before a select Hollywood audience of 2,000 people, which included the movie industry's most important clientele. According to author Beardsley, an estimated crowd of between 24,000 and 50,000 people jammed Hollywood Boulevard for blocks around the Chinese theater just to catch a glimpse of their favorite stars arriving. Ribs apparently were broken.
Oh my God.
Women fainted, and people fought to find the best vantage point to see the stars arrive.
Well, that's like Black Friday at Walmart. Sorry.
Depending upon where you shop. Yeah.
Now, Grauman employed a large corps of ushers and usherettes who were costumed in these richly worked Chinese robes of classic design. They were positioned beneath many spotlights at various stations throughout the house to guide patrons to their reserved seats. Sid also had the theater scented with the essence of sandalwood to give an authentic feel of a Chinese temple.
That's amazing.
Love that touch.
Yeah, me too. It's like Disneyland with the
Yeah,
scent of
the
vanilla when you're
vanilla.
walking down Main Street.
Yes, I knew it was something.
Yeah. Well, the opening of the Chinese theater featuring King of Kings wasn't the biggest premiere that the Chinese theater would have. Those honors would go to the premiere of Howard Hughes's Hell's Angels on May 27th, 1930, starring Ben Lyon, James Hall, and the beautiful Jean Harlow. Reserved seats for this event cost $11, which was considered quite a lot of money at the time.
Oh, wow.
And the ads promised that 1,000 movie stars would appear at the theater for the event. So in addition to that, searchlights scanned the sky. The airspace above the theater was filled with World War I biplanes in mock battle.
I love that.
Actors parachuting out of the sky down the street, and a fireworks display. Now, this event garnered a crowd estimated at 150,000 people lining up 1.5 miles down Hollywood Boulevard. I mean, that's nuts.
Wow.
And
that is so much better than a step and repeat.
it really is. A near riot apparently ensued as fans again tried to catch a glimpse of their celebrity arrivals.
You know, it's unclear how the tradition of the stars making foot and handprints in cement at the theater actually started. Now, according to one legend, Norma Talmadge, who was the wife of co-owner Joseph Skank, happened to step into a block of wet cement while visiting the theater during construction, leaving behind, of course, her footprint. This might have given Grauman the idea for the Forecourt's famed celebrity prints. In another story, though, Grauman's good friend Douglas Fairbanks Sr. bought a Los Angeles property in 1924. One of the first improvements made on the property was an irrigation dam, and as Fairbanks and his wife, Mary Pickford, were inspecting the construction of the dam, they sat down beside some freshly laid cement, pressed their hands into it, and wrote their names. Their biographer, Gary Carey, says this became the inspiration for Grauman's Forecourt.
Well, I got a third version for you.
Oh, let's hear it.
Beardsley's biography of SID GRAUMAN, he tells another story. During the construction of the theater, its plastering contractor, Rudolf Liebold, employed a mason named Jean Klossner. Now, Klossner came from a long line of European stonemasons dating back to the building of Notre Dame in Paris. I mean, that is a passed-on generational trade. Klossner's tradition when he worked on a project was to leave his handprint as a signature of sorts for every job that he completed. Grauman saw his handprint and questioned Klossner about it. Klossner told him that there was a special concrete recipe to retain prints of any sort, and Klossner's concrete recipe was a carefully guarded secret.
Who knew?
I know.
There were different types of concrete.
Yeah. Well, perhaps that's how Grauman got the idea to immortalize the stars who had appeared at his theater in the Forecourt concrete slabs and preserve them for posterity. Grauman made arrangements with Klossner to mix the concrete slabs on order. Klossner needed 3 days to prepare his chemical formula properly. He kept the formula in a safe.
Wow.
And he frequently haggled with Grauman at the last minute over his fee. So in 1928, after he had been doing this for a while, Grauman refused to meet Klossner's price, and he hired another concrete artist to obtain actor Gene Hirscholt's prints along with his smoking pipe. Yep, the Gene Hirscholt that we still know as the founder of the Motion Picture Relief Fund and for whom the Academy gives its humanitarian award. So in less than a month, Gene Hirschold's prints had completely crumbled.
Didn't use a special cement.
No, he didn't. He didn't use the special sauce.
That's right.
So Klossner then became known as Mr. Footprint, and he assisted with the footprint ceremonies until 1957. So Sid knew, we got to use this guy's recipe.
And I'm sure Klossner got his price at that point.
Oh, yeah, I bet he did. And by the way, Hirscholt's crumbled footprints were reportedly not replaced until 1949. But before we go into more about the footprints and the handprints and the history, let's give this week's Hollywood Pop Quiz.
Now, one exciting premiere that happened at the Grauman's Chinese Theater was in 1953's Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Now, of course, that starred Jane Russell and Marilyn Monroe, and at the premiere, they also got their hand and footprints in cement. Well, 20th Century Fox, as a very playful publicity stunt, did a fake protest of the movie. What was the tongue-in-cheek protest about?
Oh, I can't wait to hear this. Well, we'll have that answer and more about the Chinese theater after this.
Steve and Ann will be right back, but first another stop on the Hollywood tour. Hey, did you know the Chinese theater even has its own YouTube channel? You should check it out. They have scads of videos, foot and handprint ceremonies, movie premieres, red carpet interviews, and some cool behind-the-scenes stuff like a tour of the IMAX 70mm projector. The print of Oppenheimer had 53 film reels put together. It was 11.5 miles long and weighed 600 pounds. Anyway, lots of cool videos about the Chinese theater there, but afterward, we always recommend coming back to our YouTube channel. And now back to Steve and Nan from Beneath the Hollywood Sign.
Welcome back, everybody. Before we get further into the history of the Grauman's Chinese theater, I wanted to give a special shout out to our listener of the week. This week, it's James Ellis Spear. James, thank you so much for the likes, for the comments, for all the support. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, James. Well, I wanted to just touch on a couple of other really famous movie premieres that took place at the Chinese.
Yes, because there's so many that happened there.
Many. So one of them was the world premiere of King Kong on March 24th, 1933. This premiere was hosted by screen star Joel McCrea, who introduced the stars in attendance, including, get this, Marlene Dietrich, Al Jolson, Lionel Barrymore, Jean Harlow, Spencer Tracy, Ronald Colman, and Frederick March, along with, of course, the movie's stars Fay Wray, Bruce Cabot, and Robert Armstrong.
Now I want to go to that opening.
Yeah.
Another great one they had there on August 15th, 1939 was actually MGM held the debut of The Wizard of Oz there. And so many of the film's stars were on hand, and the event included these elaborate decorations that recreated some of the scenes from the movie, such as the cornfield, the Emerald City, Munchkin Land, and Munchkin actors were also present to greet the guests.
Very cool. Well, later in 1953, there was another elaborate ceremony for stars Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell, who starred in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. At the ceremony, Marilyn Monroe famously left an earring in the cement when making her handprints.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
We were going to take it back a little bit to the 40s. What happened at the theater in the 40s? Well, the important thing, they actually hosted the Academy Awards in 1944, 45, and 46. And this was the first time a theater had ever hosted the event. All the previous ceremonies had been held in hotels. I think first the Roosevelt in 29, and then I think they alternated between the Ambassador and the Biltmore until 1943. Well, maybe Grauman got the gig because he was a founding member of the Academy. He was also instrumental to film history, being the only theater owner to receive an honorary Oscar in 1949 for his contributions to the industry.
Well, Grauman leased the Chinese theater to Fox West Coast Theater Corporation in 1929, but he returned to operate it 2 years later, and he actually remained involved with it until he became ill shortly before his death in 1950 at the age of 70.
Now, in 1968, the Chinese theater was declared an historic and cultural landmark. In 1973, it was bought by Ted Mann, who owned the Mann Theater chain. Mann also had a close connection to Old Hollywood because he was married to screen star Rhonda Fleming. And Mann must have been a really good husband because the first thing he did when he bought the theater was he installed a wax figure of Rhonda Fleming where she sat in the lobby in a chair with these other two Chinese figures. Which is
It's bizarre.
So bizarre.
Yeah.
And these figures were intended to be touched for good luck by movie industry professionals before embarking on a new project.
Okay.
Well, after Mann bought the theater's name was, of course, changed to Mann's Chinese Theater, and it grew to become the largest independent theater chain in the country before Mann sold the business, including the Chinese Theater, to Gulf and Western in 1986.
And then in 1988, Warner Communications, a Time Warner predecessor, purchased a 50% stake from Gulf and Western. The theater chain was later sold to West Star Holdings in 1997. In 2000, it was sold again, this time to a partnership of Warner Brothers and Paramount Pictures. In 2011, a partnership called Chinese Theaters LLC purchased the theater. And in 2013, TCL Corporation purchased the naming rights for $5 million. And the theater is now known as the TCL Chinese Theater. TCL is, if you're wondering what that means, it's an acronym for The Creative Life, which is one of China's biggest electronics manufacturers.
Okay, I never knew that.
I know, isn't that wild?
Yeah. It's kind of gross, too. Can I just say it? It's almost like the Crypto.com stadium.
Yeah.
I hate
And when
the
Absolute
corporations.
Vodka got a star on the Walk of Fame because they bought it.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Well, according to the current website for the theater, the Chinese theater reopened after extensive renovations in September of 2013 and became the first and currently only IMAX theater in Hollywood. The theater is now equipped with all the technological marvels of the IMAX experience, including groundbreaking crystal clear laser projection, cutting-edge laser-aligned sound technology, and an enormous curved screens spanning both floor to floor and wall to wall.
And the seating is about half of what it was originally.
Thank you, IMAX.
Yeah.
You got to accommodate.
Well, let's dive in with the rest of this episode for some fun facts
Yeah.
about the Forecourt of
This
Stars.
is the good stuff.
The Forecourt of Stars. I think we should say it that way, right?
Forecourt, darling.
All right. How many handprints are there total, Steve?
Well, when fabulous Baker Boy star Michelle Pfeiffer, who we sort of saw get hers in April of 2025, when she left her impression, she was the 357th person to add their hand and footprints in the theater's cement.
All right, here's another one for you. Are they all on display, all 357 of them?
No. There was a recent boom in these prints, which created space issues. So at any given time, some of the slabs are in storage, some of them are being repaired. And additionally, in recent years, numerous ceremonies have been held for celebrities and famous animals, fictional characters. After their handprints have been made, they haven't been placed in the forecourt. Many of these were just movie marketing campaigns.
Okay.
And some of these that aren't in the forecourt include the Power Rangers, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Herbie the Love Bug, who put his little tires in there.
Yes.
Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Strange. Well, only one slab has been permanently removed. And I mean like gone. British-born Edmund Purdom was a rising star, and he got the hand and footprint honor when he starred in 20th Century Fox's epic The Egyptian, 1954, directed by Michael Curtiz. When the film flopped, Fox requested that the slab be removed.
Wow.
Stating they'd return it once Purdom had starred in more films. But unfortunately, Purdom's Hollywood career never took off. He moved to Italy, and his slab never reappeared.
Oh, that's really sad.
It is sad.
According to a representative of TCL, all the stones are stored in the Chinese theater except for those that have been sent away for repairs. Now, the Los Angeles Times reported that there's a committee that selects who is added to the forecourt. However, theater representatives would not disclose to the Times any details about who exactly was on that committee. The identities are kept secret in hopes of keeping the nomination process fair.
Do you believe that?
No.
Yeah. Okay. The prerequisites for the candidates are pretty broad. The TCL reps insisted that the ceremonies are reserved for honorees who have, quote, made a lasting impact on cinema. But also opened the door to other members of the entertainment industry. Overall, they're looking for someone, an icon, and an influencer in the industry. So singers, athletes, producers, cars,
Herbie Love Bug.
right? Various animals and even droids have pressed their boots into the historic cement. Let's talk about some of the more interesting ones.
This is fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this. Gene Autry's horse Champion has his hoof prints immortalized, and Al Jolson's knee is there in his famous Mammy Song pose. John Barrymore's profile is displayed. Ventriloquist Edgar Bergen's slab includes Charlie McCarthy's feet and monocle. Tom Mix's 10-gallon hat is in silhouette, as are Harold Lloyd's glasses, Harpo Marx's harp, Betty Grable's legs, and Sonia Henney's ice skates.
Wow. Well, Jimmy Durante had his nose added.
Love that.
Eleanor Powell added a pair of her tap shoes. Roy Rogers not only had Trigger's hoofs embedded, he also did an impression of his revolver, as did cowboy star William S. Hart. George Burns left an imprint of his cigar. Whoopi Goldberg left an impression of her dreadlocks. And Mel Brooks.
This is my absolute favorite one, and he's so genius.
He added a prosthetic sixth finger to his hand when he put his paw prints in the cement.
And he did it secretly, so nobody knew it.
I love
So when he
it.
did it, it was like, oh my God, there's
What
6
happened?
fingers on that hand.
6 fingers, yeah. So after it's dried, nothing could be done, right?
Such a genius.
Oh my gosh, so funny.
We know some more fun facts. As a playful prank, when Myrna Loy and William Powell showed up for their ceremony, October 20th, 1936, they wore oversized clown shoes. But of course, they did take them off before the actual footprint.
Good. Well, Gary Cooper, who was a bit of a superstitious person, had his ceremony on August 13th, 1943, which happened to be Friday the 13th that year. So he dated his handprints the 14th, so as not to be associated with an unlucky day.
And it might surprise you that Audrey Hepburn has never been asked to leave her handprints at the original Grauman's Chinese Theater. I mean, it's so hard to believe she's one of the most beloved, iconic women in Hollywood. Well, years later, and I love this, Disney World invited her to lay her handprints at their replicated Chinese theater at their theme park. She accepted, and after her prints were made public, Hollywood finally reached out, inviting her to do the same at Grauman's. She declined.
Sadly, James Dean was preparing for his handprint ceremony when he was killed in a car crash at the age of 24. Now, many of us remember the iconic episode of I Love Lucy. We just looked at it again before we started recording today. So it's Lucy and Ethel are trying to steal John Wayne's handprints from the Chinese theater, ending in disaster and humiliation, as many of their antics often did. Fortunately, that was only fiction, and there have never been any hand or footprints stolen from the theater.
That's impressive.
However, action star Jackie Chan did have to have his prints done again when his original prints from 1997 were inadvertently lost in transport somewhere.
Now, you know there is a delivery driver somewhere in L.A. who's made a coffee table out of poor Jackie Chan's slab of cement.
Okay.
You know it's out there.
Fess up, whoever you are out there.
You know, surprising, there's major movie stars who don't have their handprints immortalized in cement at the theater. Can you believe Katharine Hepburn, Deborah Carr, John Garfield, Marlon Brando, Robert Redford? None of them have handprints or feet prints in cement.
Wow.
So even superstardom does not necessarily guarantee that you're going to get to put your paws in the cement.
Right. A couple of funny things that have happened. Helen Mirren left a bracelet imprint during her ceremony. Her bracelet slipped off as she was placing her hands in the cement, and ever the pro, Dame Helen had some fun with the mistake, making sure that the unclasped bangle was a part of her imprint.
Love it. And this is funny. Julie Andrews' legs were briefly stuck in the concrete. Now, this incident created a 1 foot at a time policy going forward, although Dame Helen boldly placed both feet at the same time.
Yes. Regis Philbin accidentally stepped in the wet cement slab where the robot feet of Star Wars characters C-3PO had just been placed. Darth Vader and R2-D2 also had their feet immortalized.
You know, but looking back, it all really started with SID GRAUMAN. He was described as a soft-spoken, dedicated mover, a man who was always too busy developing his endless concepts to make serious enemies, and whose friends were legion. Toward the end of his life, gossip columnist Luella Parsons wrote of him, quote, "Sid doesn't drink or smoke. He is very generous with his friends and spends large sums of money on expensive gifts for them. He has kept his friends all his life. If anyone gets a good spot up there, it will be Sidney Grauman, master showman."
Grauman's mark on Hollywood is indelible. He revolutionized how movies were shown, not only by producing those extravagant live prologues before the movies that we talked about earlier, he also really is the inventor of the Hollywood premiere, including the red carpet and searchlights that are used to this day. Grauman was quoted as saying, "Moviegoers deserved a, quote, theatrical dinner, not just popcorn."
Nice.
And he certainly gave us that with the Chinese theater and the Forecourt of the Stars.
He certainly did. And what an iconic place to visit. I love taking friends who come into town to see it. They get so twinkly-eyed when they see all the footprints and handprints.
Yeah. There's so much to say about it that if you want to learn more, just check out our sources because there are many books that have been written and there's just a lot to say about it. Let's get the answer to this week's Hollywood Pop Quiz.
Well, of course, the question was, when Gentlemen Prefer Blondes debuted and Marilyn and Jane got their hand and feet print in cement, 20th Century Fox staged a publicity stunt that involved a protest of the movie. What was this tongue-in-cheek protest about?
Okay, was it women protesting?
It was.
Okay.
Fox, and I love this, they sent this bevy of beautiful swimsuit-clad women with
Of course
signs.
they had swimsuits on.
Of course they did. And they had signs, and they were picketing out front, and their signs said that the movie was unfair to brunettes and redheads.
Oh my gosh, that is hysterical.
Very clever.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for listening and spending this time with us. We would love it if you would give us a 5-star review wherever you listen to this podcast and follow us on social media. Our handle is @FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram, and you can watch the podcast on YouTube.
You can email us at info@FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign.com.
That's this week's view.
From Beneath the Hollywood Sign.
You've been listening to From Beneath the Hollywood Sign with Steve Cubine and Ann McNamara, the podcast that celebrates amazing stories of Tinseltown from its golden era. Join us next week for another episode and learn something else about Hollywood you probably never knew. Take a moment and give us a 5-star rating and a positive review, and tell your friends about us too. It'll help grow the podcast. Visit Steve's website at FromBeneathTheHollywoodSign.com. The executive producers are Steve Cubine and Nan McNamara. Executive producer and post-production supervisor Lindsay Schnebley. Associate producer and researcher John Price Ritchie. This podcast is part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. Visit airwavemedia.com to listen and subscribe to their other fine shows like The Box of Oddities and The Shallow End with Schnebley and Toth. Copyright 2025. All rights reserved. That's a wrap.